In November 2014, the Maternal and Child Health Bureau Division of Healthy Start and Perinatal Services hosted the 2014 Healthy Start Convention, a new era of Healthy Start, emphasizing quality and planning for success. This is a recording of the Consider the Client's Context plenary featuring Dr. Michael McAfee, Senior Director at PolicyLink and Director of the Promise Neighborhoods Institute at PolicyLink, and Ms. Nicole Redmond, chef and former Healthy Start client.
I'm going to start with, I think what is most important, which is to celebrate and thank you for the work that you do. And the reason why I want to do that is because so often when we talk about a lot of the policy things that are going on, we often talk about it absent from the work that actually is happening in the lives of families, and we don't include that in a lot of the policy discussions. So this notion of the client context is very important because so often it is absent in our policy discussions. I was in Minneapolis yesterday talking about inequality, education and income inequality in America, and it's surprising that people have a hard time actually talking about the client context, because the client context often includes things like race, class, culture, gender, systemic oppression, all these types of things that we think we can solve if we just focus on our little program. And what you heard today and throughout this session is that, in fact, this is one piece of a much broader effort if we're going to achieve collective impact. And so what I want to do today is kind of just move some of the babble, talk about all this out of the way, and just share with you how we've tried to operationalize it, because it really does start with what I think is really important. When you think about a place, in this case, when I was in Chicago, a big place with a lot of crazy politics and things like that, but there's something that is very important about place and how we enter it. And what's important about it, whether we come through a program or we're at a foundation or we come from a policy perspective or whatever, is where do we sit on this accountability pathway? And for me, what's most important about the accountability pathway is, do you actually own results? We all say that we're working on behalf of results, but it's a big difference to say you work on behalf of results simply by virtue of your position and to actually be working to drive results in a community. Because what I've learned in my own journey is when you are really driving results, you do work radically different. You do work radically different than what you just have right in front of you. And as I move into this, I'll give you the perfect example of what I mean by that. So right now, I do a lot of work with the Obama administration staff around making sure that Promise Neighborhoods becomes a permanent federal program. So in that context, I'm either in the White House or I'm in Congress or I'm working on the ground with sites to either get results or shape the policy or make sure the program becomes a permanent federal program. So I run a national intermediary. And so often, national intermediaries, we fly around the country, we talk, we write papers, we come into communities, confuse folks with a bunch of stuff that we say, and then we leave. That's not results-driven work, folks. That's not collective impact work at all. Now, I may be very busy, I may be excited about everything that I'm doing, but that's not results-driven work. It may have some seepage where there's some impact by that, but that's not as good as we can be. So when I took the job at PolicyLink, the first thing I had to decide was, how do I want to take up my leadership role? I have no authority over the 61 communities that I work with, but it doesn't mean I can't impact them. So imagine trying to lead a group of 61 communities, some of which get up to $30 million over 5 years to start building a cradle-to-career pipeline, and you're going to come in and start trying to invite them to think about doing work differently and enjoying them in that. So the first thing is we had to really decide if we're going to take on collective impact as an institute, we needed to own the same 10 results and 15 indicators that our colleagues on the ground own. That is a huge and scary step when you're an intermediary, because it is really hard to find your value add, to find your contribution in relationship to others when you're not on the ground. And as you think about the work that you do with Healthy Start, that is your work as well, to figure out how do you take the leverage of Healthy Start and invite people to align contributions in such a way that you can get a much greater result on the ground. That is often the work we avoid, because it is so easy to just say, look, this stuff is hard, folks are crazy, they don't want to work, certain folks don't have skills to do this job. I think we've heard all of this type of stuff as excuses. So we then just get very narrow and we focus on our program. And when we do that, the client context get lost. Because poverty, health outcomes, poor housing outcomes do not know a political season. They do not know a particular approach. They do not know our indifference to working with each other. All they know is they don't have housing. They don't have the supports that they need. And if we're going to create communities of opportunity across this country, our job has to be to have front and center in our leadership this notion of considering the client context. And it starts with us moving over to the right side of this document and becoming accountable for population level results. And for me, this ownership of population level results is very important. To me, collective impact doesn't mean anything if you're still talking about only serving 100 or 200 kids or families. We already know we can do that. There's plenty of evidence for that. What we don't know how to do very well, and what there's not a lot of evidence for, is can we build systems of supports throughout our neighborhoods where we're holding families from the time a child is born all the way through them entering the workforce and supporting both generations, the children and the families, the parents. That is our challenge when we think about the client context. It is this notion of integration in service of a larger result. And that's where the work gets scary, because so often when we're doing this, we don't actually have anything that we control but our program. And so I want to share with you a couple of things in terms of some traps that we need to avoid. So often we desire really big results, and this is the danger in the field if we don't correct this. We desire really big results and we start using the language of really big results, but then we only have a program to back it up. And so what happens is you've raised the expectation that a social indicator will move, but you've actually never organized yourself to move the social indicator. So then when some of us are in Congress regularly, we're hearing people use our language. So you say you're all about results. Show me the results. Well, if you're about results, why aren't the mortality rates going down? And so the danger of projection of our hopes and aspirations into a program when we haven't committed to the population level results gives people the ammunition they need to continue to cut our funding for programs that we care about, the things that we know offer supports for children and families. This notion of meetings with no accountability, meeting and talking and meeting and talking, and never taking action where we're actually lifting up the voice, wisdom, and experience of families who already are telling us what they need. And we're so dead set on doing what we're going to do. Folks, I can tell you, we can get funding for our programming if we lead differently. We've taken Promised Neighborhoods, which was folks wrote a grant to get a program. They wrote a grant to get a program because that's how you get your money as a nonprofit executive. Nothing wrong with that. They've transformed that initial vision into thinking about how do they use the leverage of their Promised Neighborhoods grant to begin to realign the systems of supports that are wrapped around a child. So imagine a nonprofit executive writing a grant because he saw the Federal Register and he saw that there was this opportunity to go get $30 million to continue to do their own thing. That's the way they've learned to do business. Now they begin to decide, you know what, I'm going to partner with all those early learning childhood providers, and we're going to realign the system. And we're not just talking about early learning, we're going to prioritize housing for the families who are coming through our program. All across the country, we're starting to see folks who just thought that they were going to manage their program, spend the money down in 5 years and walk away, begin to realize that that actually isn't their work. That might make them happy with the U.S. Department of Education happy with them, but that's not the work that a client is asking us to do. The client is asking us to do the tough work of figuring out, how do I align housing, childcare slots, health services, all these other things in that ecosystem that need to be aligned in a seamless way. The same way you and I do when we go to services. Think about the level of integration we expect when we go to the health system. I get tired when I go to the doctor's office, if you've ever been admitted, and I tell my story one time, what's wrong with me, to the doctor, and then the next doctor comes in and they ask me that story again. I'm like, it's in the computer, can't you read? Right? But yet we don't take that level of integration into account when we think about the people that we're privileged to serve. In Minneapolis, they call it reducing the seat time that families spend running around the city, trying to get access to the things that they need. And think about that. The simple notion of reducing seat time is a powerful opportunity for transformation, because in order to do it, you've got to be in relationship with other people. And that's what the client-centered context is really all about. So for us, these traps here are very important for us to avoid. It does not mean that a program is not important. It is absolutely the thing that is most important in a family's lives. It's an entry point, but there's also ways for us to leverage it up so that the programmatic great work that we do becomes the examples, it becomes the best evidence practices out there for moving to families and systems change work. So for me, when we talk about collective impact, no matter where you enter into that conversation, for me, it is about us, first off, as leaders, thinking about what are the levels of population level results I want to achieve? And then am I willing to fight for it? Am I willing to ignite conflict in a healthy way to make it happen? And this is where people start moving back away from the table. Folks, we all are skilled enough to ignite conflict in a healthy way. And we cannot be transformative if we're not. We cannot be transformative if we're not. And when I talk about conflict, I'm not talking about arguing with people about points of view and things like that. I'm talking about advancing an agenda around getting results for children and families and thinking about very clearly what are the things that have to happen. So I'm going to share with you an approach for how we try to create an environment so that you can have these types of conversations, you can hold the conflict in a way that is healthy, and most importantly, you can begin to align people's contributions in a way that aggregates up to large-scale impact. And what I'm telling you is exactly what I'm doing. So I'm not giving you theory. I'm telling you how I had to make sense of moving away from really mediocre work. As one of a very small group of African-American men who run a part of a think tank and provide direct intermediary support, it would be very easy for me to fly around the country, write papers, and talk. And people would love me for that. And I would get paid a lot of money to do that. It's actually not the work. You see my point? But it starts with, if I don't take my role up differently, that's what I do. And so that's what I want to talk to you about right now around some things that you need to do. When I think about how we were able to get Promised Neighborhood sites to join us in this notion of population level results and not just focus on programmatic strategies, there were a couple of big things that were different. The first thing we did when we met with the White House transition team was we declared results in the Federal Register. 10 results, 15 indicators. 10 results, 15 indicators. Folks have all the flexibility they want to figure out how to craft the best strategies to do that, but that started us on the right journey. 10 results, 15 indicators. The first thing for us to do as leaders when we're working with people is to figure out what's the result that we are declaring. And the reason why this is so important is because until we get into the results conversation, we're just talking past each other. And so for me, I'm always clear when I'm coming to meetings or I'm setting up that container that you hear me talk about of how I'm going to lead the work nationally. It's always grounded in the 10 results and 15 indicators. And every time I get it away from that, or I don't set that container right, we start talking about everything and nothing. So it's very important to do that. And then it's very important to figure out the measures of progress. This disciplined approach that I'm walking you through is the results-based accountability framework. It is an evidence-based approach. There's a lot of research behind it. But there's an important piece around this notion of disciplined execution. In Collective Impact, after you read the Collective Impact article and you read the articles that come after it, it says that there are really only two things that differentiate it from the collaboration literature. And that is, one, using data for learning, continuous improvement, and shared accountability. So imagine if you don't have data in the room and you're trying to craft strategy, you're already out of the collective impact framework. And then second is this notion of disciplined execution. How many of you right now in the work that you're doing could honestly name the disciplined approach that you're using to drive a process? It's not a judgment, folks. It's a red flag for us to really strongly consider. Imagine, when I used to play ball, imagine a coach who doesn't know the offense or the defense he wants to run. And he's just got it out there running, doing. We can be talented, right? We might win some games. But imagine if we don't master the offense and the defense that the coach wants us to run. And then we get mad at each other because we're not succeeding. Well, that's what's happening in our communities every day. We're calling meetings, we're convening folks, and we actually don't know the offense that we want to run to get results. And then we start pointing fingers at people because they're not executing, because we're projecting a desire for something into them without ever owning doing the work ourselves to create the conditions for all of our contributions to get aggregated up. So you declare the result. You then really spend a lot of time trying to figure out the measures of progress. And this is where a lot of the things you heard about evidence become very important. There's a lot of research around all the results and indicators that we would ever want to use. Which ones give you the best correlation between making progress on helping a child at a particular developmental stage of their life? So we've got that. But after that is really where the work starts. Understanding why an indicator is trending in a particular direction is where we begin to shortchange the work. This is so often where we start just selling our thing. I do Healthy Start, I'm gonna sell Healthy Start. I do Promise Neighborhoods, I'm gonna sell Promise Neighborhoods. And we rarely stop to really think about why is that indicator trending in the wrong direction? And what will really get it trending in the right direction? I can give you a couple of really good examples of why this is so important. I chair a workforce development organization in Chicago. They do really good workforce development training. But what they were discovering is that on their measure of progress, are folks getting employed, returning citizens getting employed? The answer was no. So they were going to double down on more training. They actually weren't going through a disciplined process of learning. When the board decided to say, no, stop for a second, tell us what you're going to do right now because you're not crafting good strategy, they went back out and started really thinking about what was happening. There's a little bitty box on applications that ask, are you a felon? So see, they had a really good program. It could not trump something that was bigger in that ecosystem, which was this little box that said, are you a felon? So we were training returning citizens up and then sending them out there and saying, just go get a job. And they were doing their part until they ran into that little bitty box. So what it meant for them was this. They had to decide, are they going to just do training? That's not a result, right? It could be, if that's what you were really in the work to do. It's not. Their result is to improve the economic standing of folks who are living below the poverty line. So very quickly, when you understand that result, you can very quickly see why they can't get off the hook for saying, hey, we're getting all sorts of awards for our job training program. Does that make sense? You may be, but that's not the result that you declared, and it certainly isn't the measure of progress. It is the retention rate and the earnings, the salaries of the folks that are getting hired. What it meant for them was that they had to continue to stay focused on doing a really good program, and they had to also build a coalition to do a Ban the Box initiative in Chicago. That was their work. So if they wanted population level results, the pathway was not through their program first. Their program had a contribution. The pathway was through joining in relationship with other folks to build a coalition that would allow a Ban the Box initiative to pass in Chicago, which they did do successfully. But folks, that's collective impact. They were holding a population level result. It was because they had the measure that they could begin to think about what's happening. We're not being successful. And then they could start asking themselves the tough questions. They could actually ignite the conflict. We can't get our job done. We can't be successful without doing something different. And that something different meant that they actually had to do their programmatic work and be in relationship with someone else. And yes, someone could have said, well, that's not my job. And that would have been an opportunity to fire that person. Because if your job is population level results, you do your job. Does that make sense? And this is the piece in our sector that sometimes we lose sight of. The client context was, I'm going out here and I'm trying to get a job. I'm doing everything that you tell me to do right. I'm already stressed out because people look at me differently because of my experiences. And now all you can tell me is, I got more training for you. That doesn't feel too good if you're the client, does it? But so many of us have forgot what it feels like to be in a situation where we need people to be an agent of change on our behalf. And I'm asking you to remember those times when you needed someone to do a little bit more than just their job for you. I wouldn't be here if folks didn't do a little bit more for me than just my job. I am an example of random opportunity. When I go home this Thanksgiving, I'm going to see all of the dysfunctions that you have been talking about play out. I'm the only one to go to school, and that comes with its own issues with your other colleagues, your other brothers and sisters. And I say that because I'm only here because of folks doing more than their job. I'm trying to make it make a lot of sense for you. So you think about declare the result, select the measures, begin to do what we call the story behind the curve. It's only then that we can really think about the right partners. Notice we didn't think about partners on the front end, right? We don't know who we need. We don't know the contributions that we need until we start doing the discipline work. And then we can begin to work with, once we know the partners that we think who can get us to population level results, then we can bring those partners in the room, and together we can figure out what are the best evidence solutions that we'll implement in relationship together. We will co-design that together. It may be that we have to tweak our Healthy Start model a little bit in partnership with somebody else to do something bigger. Does that make sense? And then we've got to make sure that the entire team is actually committing to population level results with us. Notice we're doing it on the front end, and as we lead someone through this process, we're going to do it again to make sure that they're there with us. And then we're going to select a mix of solutions by indicators. And this is where the stuff breaks down, folks, because if you are doing population level work effectively, you will have a good mix of indicators. And usually that mix will include families, programs, policies, and systems. If it includes one of those, something's wrong. It's rare that you're going to program your way to a population level result. It's rare you're just going to tell families, do it yourself. It's going to be a mix. And if you want to talk about real community engagement, if you really want to talk about real client-centered engagement is that clients own a result and a measure and an ownership and a contribution just like everyone else, or they don't get into the room. No one gets into the room without owning a result, without owning a contribution. And the reason for this is because if you don't, we're only making our work harder by dealing with personalities and not the work. Does that make sense? But it also makes us own respecting the voice of clients. Instead of just having meetings where we feed them and report out to them like we're supposed to just do to them, they are equal partners in achieving population level results for us. That is a different approach. I'm so tired of all the engagement literature out there that says I got to read a book to know how to talk to people. We know how to engage if we are engaging around something that matters. And so that's the mix that you should see. And then after you get through that, you should be able to then develop targets. Targets are not things that are static because we're trying to come up with our best guess estimate of how we're going to proceed on a trajectory. They do give us some indication of performance, but they're not concrete. Our job is not to hold people to a target like it is something that can't be changed. We will learn better over the years how to calibrate better targets. But for right now, we need a target so that we can align performance measures for each partner. And then those, where appropriate, those partners have their performance measures in a written agreement. This notion of accountability for population level results is something that we can do today without anyone changing our job description, without anyone giving us a grant. This notion of reaching out to folks when we get clear about the results that we want to lead and be in relationship with others in our communities is something we can do today without money and a grant. The money will be necessary when we start talking about aligning in different ways. But when you can show folks this level of accountability, folks will come with you. The last thing I'll say as I close out here, we're seeing it happen in the Promised Neighborhood sites. Sites who did not get funded, and folks were getting ready to walk away from the table, are getting funded. The GAO, Senator Klein asked the GAO to look at Promised Neighborhoods as a way of killing the program. They couldn't even release the report because what they saw were communities doing this work. It was different. It was based in evidence. It was based on results. Folks, we can change the world, get to population level results if you and I take this on. The privilege of the position that you sit in the Healthy Start program is that you actually have something to lift up that is substantive, that people will listen to. You all are the leaders that need to drive policy in our communities. You are the leaders that need to drive the systems changes in our communities, not folks who aren't doing the work. There is something to be said for grounded theory. Your theory is grounded, and it is the best theory because it is lifting up the voice, wisdom, and experience of communities. If we can hold that interest and our interest to get population level results, we'll truly achieve collective impact. Thank you.
Now we will hear from Ms. Nicole Redmond. Again, she is a client at the Magnolia Project in Jacksonville, Florida.
My story began in 2012, coming from all the way from Chicago with no family, no connections, no anything, stuck in a shelter. Very depressing moment, scared, no one to talk to, no one to turn to, no help. And that's when I met Miss King, who introduced me to the Magnolia Project. With the Magnolia Project, they gave me the confidence, the reassurance that there are people out there that are willing to help, that there is people who care and are willing to, you ask for the help, they're willing to do all that. With the 2 years, I worked with Miss Vanessa, who was my case manager, and with the 2 years working with her, I accomplished housing to finally get out of that shelter for my boys so they can have their own space. Attended culinary school. Food is my passion. I love food, I love to eat. After graduating, I shortly after found employment through the Four Rivers Smokehouse, being a chef for them, doing all the back of the house work for them, the backbone of the restaurant, which is not a very easy job. And with the 2 years working with Miss Vanessa, she made it clear and important that your health is a great asset in order to do your goals and get everything accomplished. It's like a running car. Your car breaks down, you can't go nowhere. If your body breaks down, you can't go nowhere, especially being a single mother with children, however many. So she made it clear and possible for me to obtain everything now, and I'm also excited, nervous. Also excited to be working with them again for another 2 years so that I am able to have my future plans be accomplished as well, which is to be a homeowner. I want to be a homeowner. Four Rivers, I love food, but Four Rivers is just a job. I want a career in the food industry. That's why I chose this field, because I'm like a little piggy when it comes to food. In Chicago, there is lots of Spanish restaurants. It's a franchise, it's really big, and me, myself, being of the Spanish culture, I notice in Miami it's big on that as well, but Jacksonville doesn't, have a lot of that. So I want to give Jacksonville a taste of the Spanish culture and have my own Spanish restaurant. And it's going to be fun the next 2 years working with Magnolia, which I'm very excited for as well. And I'd like to give the special thanks to Magnolia as a whole for making this possible for me and the support with everything. Magnolia as a team with the groups, Women Empowering Women, was awesome. Gave me that oomph that I needed to get it all done. Miss Johnson as well, Miss Matthews, and Miss Vanessa. I want to thank you guys so much for this. It's an honor to be up here, even though it's nervous. I'm a lot of nervous. To make this possible, to continue on and to, reach out to other single mothers as well, that it's scary, you're alone, but there are people out there that are willing to help, reach out, and, make it possible for, just because you're alone doesn't mean you can't do it. Just because you have kids doesn't mean you can't do it. As long as you maintain your health, anything is possible. You can get everything done. So yeah, thank you guys so much.
Thank you for listening to the Consider the Client's Context Plenary from the 2014 Maternal and Child Health Bureau Healthy Start Convention. For access to the slides and more information on this topic, please visit www.healthystartepic.org.